art nerds! Today I am reviewing the Arteza Twi Markers in the 48 color set, and I want to disclose immediately that I purchased these markers out of pocket off of the Arteza website. In fact, all of the Arteza products that I have reviewed here on this channel were purchased either from Amazon or through Arteza out of pocket. I also want to point out that though I bought these through the Arteza site, they arrived in an Amazon box. Now, I bought them off the Arteza site because the site has more items than Amazon does. There's more selection. And at the time, they were also selling the Everblend markers on the site, but not on Amazon. But it's way more expensive than buying them through Amazon. So you guys could kind of see me in the reflection on the transparent overwrap, and I don't really understand why they included overwrap with these, because they came in a plastic box and they are shipped, like they're not hanging in a store open stock. So like I said, I purchased these from the Arteza site with one of their spin the wheel coupons. It was a 10% off coupon. It was shipped by Amazon. I find that buying through the Arteza site is more expensive than purchasing through Amazon, but they have things that Amazon doesn't list, and these were purchased out of pocket for the purposes of review. They are $33.89 at the time of this review on the Arteza site, $32.99 on the Amazon site. There are sets of 48 and 100 available. They are dye-based, water-based. They have a fiber brush tip and a plastic nib fine tip, and they are blendable. And the box makes it seem like they're really marketing these for hand letterers, bullet journalers. Wow, cannot talk today. Sorry, guys. Bullet journals. Did it again. Y'all, help me. Anyway, they're watercolor dye-based markers, and I think that's why I bought them several months ago, is I was like, oh, watercolor markers, let me review all of the watercolor markers. But as you guys will see further in the review, that might have been a mistake. So the packaging is plastic wrap over a plastic box, and I just can't understand, for something you're going to ship, why you would just include more waste. And the exterior plastic box seems fairly sturdy. So the fine tip is 0.4 millimeters. There is also a brush tip, and I'm going to spoil this review for you guys. That brush tip is not flexible. It promises unique color, water-based ink, and blendable. They are compact, ideal for watercolor techniques and journaling. And then on the back of the box, they list all 48 colors with their color numbers and their color names. So since the plastic wrap is pretty tight on this box, I'm using an X-Acto blade just to kind of get it started for me. And even just like a little circle dot of tape to hold the box closed would be less waste than having this plastic wrap. And I'm going to harp about that because I review a lot of art supplies here on this channel, and the amount of waste art supplies generates for no good reason is ridiculously high. So I'd like to see more art supply companies work harder to reduce the amount of waste they produce, so we're not putting so much plastic into landfills to just sit forever. And yes, y'all can see my face in the reflection. It's me! They also promise premium, which I understand that Arteza is trying to establish like series and lines the way Strathmore does, but premium implies premium, whereas their expert line is really their highest grade line. So inside our 48 piece set, we have 4 trays of these marker slash brush pens. I think the trays are a little bit unsturdy. They're a little flimsy, and they don't really lend themselves well for travel and portability the way if you had put dividers inside this box like most packaging have, and then you can just slide the markers out. That would be much more travel friendly. So immediately upon opening the package, I noticed how bright and colorful these brush pens are. They come in a really wide gamut of colors. This is the 48-piece set, so we have a lot of neons. Now, we are very much lacking in terms of skin tones, so that's something I'd like to see. That might be in the 100-piece set, more skin tones. If you have the 100-piece set and there are more skin tones, please do let me know in the comments below. So I purchased these several months ago, and I'm looking at them now, and I'm already disappointed in the quality of these markers. I'm not even sure why I purchased them at the time. I think it's because I was interested in good water-based brush markers, but honestly, when you buy something and then you wait several months to do the review, sometimes you look at the product and you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I spend that money? That's the case with these. So the bodies there, the markers themselves are clear bodied with a color coded collar. That's the area around the brush. They look like they would have a clip, but there's actually no clip. And because there's kind of a clip indentation, these are not double, the caps can't go on either side. The caps are sided. The body screening mentions the brush end, says Arteza Twi Marker, their water-based ink, blendable, color name, and color marker. And it seems like it's fairly easy to grab the color you want already. So as with so many of my other water-based and alcohol-based marker reviews, I'm going to compare these markers to some of the other markers in the same category that I've reviewed in the past. So I kind of went digging through my collection and I forgot how many water-based markers I have. It's definitely time for me to cull the stash and start donating some to my local Goodwill. So these are all of the water-based / watercolor markers I'm going to be looking at in today's mini review. We've got quite a few of them, many of which have been reviewed either here on this channel or over at my blog at nattosoup.blogspot.com. We have Tombow ABTs, we have Sakura Koi, we have Kuretake Art and Graphic Twin, we have Kuretake Clean Color Real Brush Markers. We have the Neo Pico 4 markers. We have the Acacia Sai markers. And you guys will see links in the description below to all of these reviews. So if you're interested in finding the right watercolor or water-based marker for you, please do read the description. We have the Zig Art and Graphic Twin Real Brush and Fine Marker. We have the Spectrum Aqua Watercolor Marker. We have an Edding Watercolor Brush Pen. We have the Ecoline Watercolor Marker. We have the Kuretake Fude Biori. We have the Molotov Aqua Markers. And we have the Staedtler Watercolor Brush Pens. And those were the markers I reviewed right before I reviewed these. So for this review, I'm only pulling out dye-based markers. I also have the new Faber-Castell watercolor markers that I've reviewed and the old Winsor & Newton watercolor markers that I've reviewed. So if you're interested in more professional quality watercolor markers for watercolor painting, please also check those reviews out. So this is the Arteza Twi Marker with the brush end and the fine end. The brush end is a non-flexible fiber brush. The fine end is a little bit unusual. It is a plastic nib, which is going to be kind of sturdier for heavy-handed people over time, which might make this a good choice for bullet journaling. Then we have the Staedtler watercolor marker. It has a fiber brush, very similar to the Arteza Twi Marker, and a small fiber bullet nib. These are made by Staedtler. We have the Kuretake Clean Color Real Brush. These are one of my favorite small dye-based watercolor markers. I have several videos here on this channel where I use those. We have the Tombow ABT, which is quite popular among brush letterers. This also features a fiber brush tip and a small bullet nib. The Sakura Koi watercolor brush pen. These are dye-based brush pens with a fiber tip. The Ecoline watercolor marker. These are neat because they are foam rubber tips and they're refillable. We're going to put the Kuretake Fude Biori to the side for a moment. And Edding watercolor marker. I haven't had a chance to review those just yet. The Spectrum Aqua watercolor markers, which are dye-based ink and feature a more flexible, larger fiber nib and a plastic nib on the other side. The Zig Art and Graphic Twin, which also features a rubber brush tip and a small bullet point, and it's one of my other favorite water-based markers because of that foam rubber tip. The Art and Graphic Twin Real Brush and Fine, so it's like we took the clean color Real Brush and combined it with an Art and Graphic Twin. The Acacia Sai, so this is a dye-based watercolor brush pen, very similar to the Real Brush in that it has individual bristles. And the Neo Pico 4, these use the same body screening. We have the Molotow markers, which are refillable and feature a brush and chisel nib. We have the Molotow Soft Pump Soft Liner, something like that, which is also refillable and has a very soft, flexible nib. And then finally, we have the Kuretake Fude Biori, which I reviewed years ago over on the blog, but not as a watercolor marker. And here's everything laid out so you guys can get a look at the different nibs and the different brushes that are available. And I really encourage you guys to find the one that works really best for you today. So the markers in today's comparison were the Staedtler double-ended watercolor brush pens, the Molotow Aqua Twin, the Molotow Graphics Aqua Ink Pump Soft Liner, that's quite a name, the Ecoline brush pen, the Zig Fude Biori, the Edding 1340 brush pen, Spectrum Aqua, Acacia Sai, Neo Pico 4, Zig Clean Color Real Brush, Zig Art and Graphic Twin RB Plus Fine, Zig Art and Graphic Twin, Sakura Koi, and Tombow ABT. So next we're going to do our swatching. We're gonna swatch every color both ends, and then we're gonna go in and do limited watercolor swatching. And compared to other brush pens and watercolor markers, as you guys can tell, I have reviewed a lot of brush pens and watercolor markers over the years. I'm going to link them, like I said, and in the cards and in the description. And for this, I'm only pulling dye-based markers. There are and have been so many of these dye-based cheap watercolor markers on the market, like so many. Even Crayola has offered several under their signature line, and I think it's because these are really cheap to make and the brush lettering community is willing to try them. But I would really recommend, if you're not into bullet journaling or brush lettering, given the price of these may not be for you. So I'm going to swatch all 48 of these colors. And I also feel like the Arteza Twi Markers feel kind of flimsy compared to the other water-based, dye-based brush pens I pulled out. Much more like a cheap pen than like a marker. And when recapping, I noticed there's a high probability of wrecking the fiber nib. So if you have these, please be careful when you're recapping them. Most of the markers we pulled out are twin-tipped and feature either a fiber brush or a real brush with nylon bristles. The exceptions are the Zig Art and Graphic Twin that has a rubber brush and the Ecoline, which have a rubber brush. And most have bullet nibs for the fine nib, with the exception of the Twi Art markers and the Spectrum Aqua markers having a very fine plastic nib. And I think I bought these hoping the nibs would be small foam rubber nibs because the picture wasn't clear and the description at the time just said brush. And I think under that rationale, these would have been really good, really fun markers. But as you guys can see through the clear plastic bodies, they're just one entire wick. So I'm not sure it would be able to keep up with the ink flow that a foam rubber nib requires. And these are definitely not refillable. So as I'm swatching, I notice that the brushes are already kind of mushy and they're already prone to fraying and leaving schmutz on the paper. They might handle better on a smooth plate surface rather than a watercolor paper. We're swatching on Canson XL paper today. The color selection tends to be very bright, which is kind of fun and inspiring. There's a lot of neons, and given that these are dye-based, they're probably not very light fast. They're going to be light fugitive, which means they're going to fade fast in direct sunlight or under bright lights. There are not many skin tones, and the brushes don't have a lot of flex, so I really can't recommend these for brush letterers. Now, if you're a brush letterer and you have different experiences, maybe once the brushes get quote-unquote broken in, they're better for lettering, please do let me know in the description. I'm a comic artist and I'm an illustrator. I am not a brush letterer, and your insight, your information is very, very useful for me, and it's something I would take into consideration when doing future marker reviews. And I feel like these really aren't competitive for the price. Arteza is pretty expensive for a company that just repackages and rebrands old ideas. They're not offering any innovation here, and these types of markers are very cheap to make. You can find these all over the place. But you can see the colors are really fun, and they would be great for bullet journaling. Again, just going to remind y'all though, for the price they want for these, there are more affordable markers on the market that will give you the same thing. Also want to point out, these were purchased out of pocket, so my feelings about these markers come from having paid for them out of pocket. This was not a sponsored by Arteza review. My wonderful, wonderful sponsors are my phenomenal, fantastic art nerds over on Patreon. You can join their ranks at patreon.com/nattosoup and help me do what I'm doing, as well as my fiance, Joseph Coco. Without their help and support over the years, these sort of reviews would just no longer be possible since we don't see any outside sponsorship. I will always disclose to you guys when products have been sent to me care of or for the purposes of review. Okay, so now that I have everything dry swatched, I'm going to select just a few colors from each tray rather than swatching all 48 colors for our watercolor swatching, since these are being touted as watercolor markers. And I feel like a lot of brands make dye-based markers, slap a flimsy fiber brush tip on them and call them watercolor markers. That doesn't really make, they're water soluble, yes, and they are blendable to an extent, but that doesn't make them watercolor markers. In fact, I feel like these are just a bit dry for watercolor markers. So we're going to start with a neon, and neons, as I mentioned earlier, tend to be very, very light fugitive. So a neon is going to fade the fastest if it's in direct sunlight. Now, as I was swatching these, I noticed that not all of the colors fully activate. You do get some harsh delineation, which when I'm reviewing watercolor markers, I'm looking for a very clean swatch out with the water. I don't want to see where I put down my marker line, or rather where my marker line ends. And when you market your product as watercolor markers, I'm going to judge them compared to other watercolor markers, especially if your packaging says premium on it, even if that's just a marketing term. And I did not notice any major color separations from the colors I swatched, and I tried to pick a few that would separate out, like some browns, some skin tones, and some of the darker blues. And as I mentioned a few times, there's really not enough skin tones for me to be able to recommend this to other comic artists and illustrators. If you like to draw people, there's just not really enough skin tones in this set as a standalone set. You would have to introduce some other colors. Now, this set could be really fun used with your Copic markers, or used with the Zig Art and Graphic Twin markers, or the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. But again, mostly when I review art supplies, I review them how they stand alone as a product. So I want to just bring the paper and maybe even a cup full of water, and I want to be able to make art with them. So that's kind of how I'm judging them. So now for a blendability test. These are a little bit too dry and too prone to fraying for me to trust these with a sphere test like I did with the Staedtler markers, so I'm just doing a few blendings. They layer okay, but they don't blend as well as promised. The packaging says that blendable. I expect clear blends without any paper tearing, without any schmutzing, and without any noticeable difference. I want a clear ombre from color to color. When layered wet into wet, they also start to tear up the paper. Now, usually brushes are more gentle on cellulose papers like this one, but even these were starting to tear up the paper. So it makes me wonder, who are these for? They're probably for art journalers, scrapbookers, bullet journals. These seem like they would work okay on thin coated papers, maybe hand letterers or Bible illustrators. If any of y'all like these markers, please hit me up in the comments with a link to your art. I'd love to see what you guys are making. I'm always open to fresh inspiration. So I'm going to compare these now to Crayola Super Tips, because honestly, that's what they put me in mind of. The color selection and how they handle just really reminds me of Crayola Super Tips. So here are a few of the different blends that I did, as well as some watercolor testing. So we're going to start with the Super Tips, and we're going to try to blend from an orange to a magenta, and we blend back using our orange. Then we're going to test how water soluble these are. And I have several videos on this channel on using Crayola markers as watercolor markers that I'd love for you guys to check out. They're certainly much cheaper than these Arteza markers. You can get the 100 pack for about $20, which is way cheaper than the 33 something I paid for 48. Now I'm trying the same blend with similar colors using the Arteza set. We're also going to do a little bit of water solubility testing as well. Most dye-based markers, unless they're like India ink markers, which aren't dye-based at all, they're pigment, but most dye-based markers that are water-based are going to be water soluble. So we're back to the Crayolas again. We're trying a different blend. We're going from green to teal. And the super tip does tear up the paper a bit. This is one of the downsides of using water-based markers, is that when you're doing blending, if you're working on papers that are uncoated, it does tend to abrade the paper's surface since the water doesn't dry as fast as alcohol would. And we did get a nicer blend using the Arteza brush tips for this. So while I was putting these away, I realized that these aren't really as portable as some of the other markers on the market with their current box design. A nicer, more permanent storage solution would help justify the price and make these easier to recommend to bullet journal artists. I know Arteza is also selling watercolor brush pins that have the individual nylon bristles. I am not planning on reviewing those, as I would have to purchase them out of pocket, and I just have not been super impressed with the price of Arteza products or the quality of Arteza products. I would rather invest that money in products that I know will perform well and then share those products with you guys. So this is hopefully one of the last of my so-so product reviews. I always go into this hoping I'll be impressed, hoping the company will bring some innovation, hoping they'll bring something new to the table, hoping they'll have listened to their customers and to YouTubers and to reviewers and make changes that other products aren't willing to make. And it's always disappointing when I find out that they've just kind of bought the same marker body and are offering the same thing other companies are already offering, because there's really no reason to recommend a product like this when there are better products on the market that cost as much or cost less. So these markers are bright, bold, and come in fun poppy colors. I think these could be great for bullet journaling and art journaling and would be fun for doodling if it wasn't for that price. And just a reminder, I paid $33.89 minus 10%, so about $30 on the Arteza site, and they're $32.99 on Amazon. So they're a little bit pricey for thin dye-based watercolor markers. The super tips are less than $20. You get twice as many colors and you're going to get way more skin tones. I also want you guys to keep in mind, this is coming from someone who is a comic artist and an illustrator. So what I want from these markers, what I expect from these markers might be different than what you're looking for. Still, I hope this review was helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. And I hope you guys will look forward to the field test where I put these markers through their paces and hopefully teach you guys some tips and tricks on how to use them if you already own them or if you receive them as a Christmas present. I do like water-based, dye-based markers. I think they're a lot of fun, and I like that they are low fume. So for people who are sensitive to alcohol markers, water-based dye markers might be a way better option for you. And I have several videos on this channel where I show you how to use the Zig Clean Color Real brush markers to make beautiful art. And I mention again, none of these videos have been sponsored. None of these videos were paid for except by my wonderful art nerds over on Patreon. So if you like what I do and you want to help me continue to do it, please head over to patreon.com/natosoup, join the art nerd community, and get early access to videos like this one. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you like the Arteza Twi Markers and you purchase them or receive them as a gift, let me know in the comments below and link me to your art so I can check it out and I can add you on Instagram. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys again really soon with another awesome video. Bye guys!